So we will give a brief introduction on what OSM Release TEN offers after the brief introduction, and then we will be give a demonstration to illustrate the capabilities of OSM, which is the new release related to the edge in this case, given by Mark Beierl, ETSI member of OSM. Okay, so let's get started. So the first question, for those who are not familiar with OSM or just heard about it, but not much details, is what does OSM do? Why do I need an OSM, right? And we can explain a lot of things, but making a long story short, OSM is providing you the capability to create networks on demand as a cell. And for that purpose, OSM communicate with the different platforms that are supplying the low-level components, I mean the VMs, some different type of connectivity, and even their own pieces of software that are deployed on top of them. And as Orchestration is building some structure around them, is creating some coordination around them, and creating first DNFs, network functions that are virtualized, or with the physical components we'll see later, and stitching them together to become full network. Okay, so that abstraction is what is providing OSM. It can be called by an API in bound that is the mean, provide the means to be able to request for that service. Okay. Then that will work with different types of infrastructure, not just specific type, but the key here is that we should be able to work with different type of clouds, private or public, with different type of technologies from different suppliers, and even with container technologies that are not exactly the same as infrastructure of other kinds. So we need to take that into account, and also the way to interconnect them with the SDN. Also, we need to be able to work in multiple sites, and we'll see it today in our demonstration. In a network, typically has a shape, so we need to embrace that source of complexity and be ready to work with that. And even in the case of the software, I mean, the pieces of software in NFV, like the BNFs or other type of network functions, are composed of elements of different nature. So we have the VMs, but we may also have containers or even physical elements, and they can be combined in different manners to create the actual network function. Okay? Something that is specific for this for telco use cases is that in many of these pieces of software, the flow of traffic goes through them. They are not endpoints, they are in the middle of the traffic, so they need to perform really well in passing packets and taking decisions based on the conditions of those packets. That means also some restriction in terms of the way that the resources are assigned to those applications, and that's precisely what OSM takes care for you. So you don't need to be too aware about those subtleties and those low-level details. Okay? But the thing is that once that all that those sources of complexity have been abstracted, they are abstracted and included in what we call a package. Actually, in a set of packages. These pieces of software are packaged as part of a network function package, and when I want to stitch them together as part of a unique network service, that is packaged as well in a network service package. The point is that those packages at this point are always in place, but and the beauty of this approach is that it allows us to reuse them and particularize them have only an at instantiation. So we can create as many replicas as we want in different type of infrastructure, in different locations, and as many as we need. And also, we can leverage on that structure, but allowing sufficient flexibility to pass parameters. So we can particularize, for instance, to the IP addressing schema that are in each of the environments or any other the peculiarity that we have. And that's really powerful because it increases dramatically the replicability of a process that if done from, I mean, done at very low level and without any kind of abstraction, it could become really complicated and error prone. I think that that is the, well, apparently there are some mic issues and there are, and hopefully it's better now. All right. Um, so the key here is that these packages can be reused. So they can be parameterized. So we don't need to create a different package for just a similar deployment somewhere else that are agnostic to the type of infrastructure. So we don't need to be aware of which type of Vim we are designing the package. That will be a decision that we can take at the very last moment if we want for the type of SDN. And also, we can include all the life cycle to manage those components together. So we don't need to be aware of every single operation in each component if we don't need it. Okay? All this is produced and this is produced by a community. So it's our way of building a consensus around the approach to modeling of this. Is that we have in OSM a really large and diverse community with 147 members, which is open to new participants, of course, but I mean, 147 members, I mean, if we compare with just the previous release, I mean, we are almost 10 more members that we have. For some reason, this is moving, so I will turn for this. Okay. And about the OSM ecosystem, the companies are listing the products. I mean, it's a different approach where we are having a list of companies who are producing products or offer related to OSM, either because they interoperate with them or they can be they are based on OSM, right? And this is just an opt-in process, so this is the tip of the iceberg that this is sufficient. Regarding the OSM ecosystem, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as I said, but it keeps growing in different areas. In the OSM and DSS area, which is the one that is really new one. Is we are happy that we have already for Blazor a large number of DNS, and this is, as I said, the tip of the iceberg because there are more DNS in OSM. More different distributions that are offering an OSM distro for, that can be supported. A large number of companies can provide consulting, training, of course, a number of type of infrastructure that are supported, and it's the main choice for most of the research projects in this area. Okay, so coming to the, I mean, the good thing is that production deployments keep growing in OSM. Last year, in our last webinar, we announced that there was one significant public production deployment happened in South America. Since then, 4 new deployments have been incorporated, and 2 more are planned, awarded and planned for 2022. plus others that are not in the radar of the community, but this is, well, this is, I mean, some of we help, and we are, this is of course conditioning the way that we are proceeding, because even the size of these deployments is something that we need to be aware, but we are really happy about how this ecosystem is working. Okay, and now the new release. So release 10, what release 10 offers are new features that we believe that allow us to foster and consolidate the current number of the deployments of OSM. We are improving our support for public cloud with a new generation of the connector to Azure Cloud that is supporting new functionality that is now available in Azure. Also, we have improved the way that we can communicate with the VNFs. In particular, we can deploy pieces of OSM remotely as well, so they can assist in the configuration of the network functions on site, minimizing the surface that is exposed, and in some context that is quite good. Actually, for in terms of the going through the some of the regulatory constraints, we have better access to the subscription API that now, besides enriching it, is also that is more accessible, and we have an extension in our OSM client. And monitoring has been improved as well with a view on what resources are available in each of the Vim targets that we have. It's something that is quite convenient, although it's not part of what I've described, but it's quite convenient in practical terms for deployment. Along with many different improvements in usability and stability that are derived from the use of OSM for serious deployment. Right? If we wanted to summarize what is shipped in OSM, is not trivial. So I focus on release 10 and the novelties, but the things that we have actually 11 releases at our back. We started with release 0. So right now we are quite aware that it's not trivial to describe one by one the functionalities that OSM offers. Maybe there's no point to describe it in that manner, because it's usually too abstract to understand what are the capabilities the system is offering to you. And I think that this is why we are starting, in addition to our regular approach of supporting the new functionality, is what you can do with the new functionalities that are enabled. And this is, as we have seen, I mean, in 2020, we started with the Magma ETSI demonstration to illustrate all the capabilities that we have available already back then. In the recent OSM 11 Hackfest, some teams that arrived that week and had an overview of how to proceed on onboarding network functions. They were able to onboard a number of network functions, including most of them open source, but some commercial ones, as you can see. Today you will see a scenario we take, so you can understand better what OSM can do for you in really complex scenarios. And in our upcoming Hackfest, that is due to the 13th to 17th of September, we plan to do the same, to extend the demonstrations on what we can do with in different use cases with different network functions. Actually, this Hackfest will be focused on the open air interface, right? And we will focus on packaging and onboarding the 5G core network function. So anyone who is interested in general in energy topics and in service providers, integrators, network function vendors, fields and researchers, or anyone who is interested in this area is welcome to participate. And I think that they will learn a lot. I think it's an excellent opportunity to join us. It's a free event, and it's just a matter of registering on time. So when you have a seat reserve. Okay? You'll be able to participate and have a hands-on experience with OSM with a similar approach as described. Okay? And now let me introduce my colleague Beierl from Canonical and also serving as a TSC member, who will give us illustrate all these capabilities in a demonstration on it from OSM. So, Mark, over to you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. So hello and welcome. I am Mark Beierl from Canonical, OSM TSC member and interim DevOps leader. So what I'd like to do is go over, just a little bit of some, concepts, basically. We just heard from Francisco-Javier about OSM and where OSM is and what it does. So I'd like to just sort of go through a brief explanation of what we're talking about when we talk about edge deployments now. So the first question we have to ask ourselves whenever we talk about edge is, where is the edge? The edge is not necessarily a place. It's a concept of distributed computing, where we place computational elements closer to the users that require them. So this could be cellular data, where we put computers or rugged environmental compute elements, right up on the radio tower, or at central base sites where the towers aggregate their information. So that is one place for edge to occur. Another place could be a store. So management and administration in a store would come from the central site, but things that would matter to the store can be processed and dealt with directly in the store. For example, things like inventory management, announcements, timed announcements, or timed adverts inside the store, virtual reality mirrors where you can try on an outfit and then go into the fitting room and look at that outfit and press buttons on there to say, okay, what would this outfit look like in different styles or different colors? Could be targeted advertising inside the store, and notices that you've spent a certain amount of time looking at MacBooks, and so they're going to, target MacBook advertising to you. Not that we all, as consumers necessarily like targeted advertising, but it's certainly something that could be happening inside a store. So while there is an exchange between the central site and the edge sites, there's not necessarily going to be any disruption to the edge site if there's a loss of that network. So the idea of, the software in the store, it should be capable of running autonomously. And anytime we lose the network, that should not impact the local operations. And that's another advantage to distributed and edge computing. So here we have a store. Customers are wandering around your store, but it is so big, you have created a map. Yes, this is idea. It's no relation to any other possible store that might, have similar maps. So customers are wandering around your store, and as you can see, it's, kind of big and complicated to navigate. And so we want to make sure that you've got the best experience possible. So we've decided to create a new in-store experience, which is basically the IdeaMart GPS. We have in-store Wi-Fi happening here. So when you come into the store, you can automatically join the Wi-Fi on entry, and there's things like, well, where can I find such a product? It gives you the in-store location. It might give you inventory or pictures of it. Help you build up a shopping list so that you know what things you want and where they are. Helps you around with an in-store GPS, a navigational help. I want to be able to get from here to there. So what does this look like with OSM? The deployment of a network service with OSM. In your corporate data center, you have OSM installed. So we will put OSM here. Then you're going to have a store that you've opened up, conveniently located near your favorite customers. At this store, we have a small server with Kubernetes running on it. This is our edge site. So to get our application running, we need to have what OSM calls a network service descriptor loaded into OSM. This is based upon a ETSI solution specification, a standard, SOL 6 to be exact. And these network service descriptors can be interchanged with any other solution that implements SOL 6. So, quick little plug here. Coming up in October is actually a ETSI event called a plug test, and it's a NFV and MEC interoperability plug test. And so when I say, these things are standards based, that's actually a place to for any vendors or people participating in this space to be able to bring their solution and go, okay, I would like to interop and test to make sure that I'm compliant as well. Now, to get back to our store here. So we need the network service descriptor, which describes our application. In our case, it's a simple network service that's an ingress with a load balancer and one or more web servers that are going to be running behind that. So we tell OSM that we would like to deploy this at the store. So it goes over the internet to our store, and it instructs Kubernetes to start the services that we've described. Great, we've got a web server up and running now. And our customers can now connect to that in-store Wi-Fi. So what does this look like using OSM? I am going to swap over now to my live screen here, and I have two windows that I'm going to be toggling back and forth. This is the new version of OSM. This is OSM version 10. This is our web interface where we can browse through OSM. We can see things like what we call virtual infrastructure management accounts. And this is the core of OSM's ability to communicate with systems. So whether it's a local virtualized infrastructure manager or a remote, one that's at an edge site, if it's in a cloud, everything anchors on this Vim account. And from within Vim accounts, we can also specify a subset, which are the K8s clusters. So in the case where we have a Vim account that doesn't actually control VMs, but it's only going to be controlling K8s clusters, we would create what we call a dummy Vim account with location and other information just to be able to anchor that K8s cluster from. Because the core concept of locality and placement is still a Vim account when it comes to OSM. Okay, so what I'm going to do is first, let me clear my screen here. First, I'm actually going to create a Vim entry for our first store site. So here I can specify things like the name for that. User password and tenant are empty right now because this is not actually going to be talking to VMs or anything like that. It is going to be talking directly to Kubernetes, and I'll show you how we do that in a moment. So the auth URL is a arbitrary one, and I can specify things like an actual location for this. The location itself is not used in OSM as far as any sort of interpretation goes. It is used when we go and take a look at our Vim accounts here. Sorry, let me just refresh this. For our Vim accounts, we can do things like view them on a map, and I can see, oh, that is where that particular one is located. So this one happens to be located on Carrer de la Canuda, in Barcelona, Spain. So that is our first Vim account that we've created. And now I'm going to go ahead and tell OSM about the K8s cluster that exists inside of it. So here is the creation of the OSM K8s cluster. And you'll notice what we've done is we've tied it to, and I'm sorry, that's scrolled, broken right in the middle of the line, but we essentially have tied it to Site1 Vim. So now we have this relationship between our Vim accounts and our K8s clusters. So there's a K8s cluster and a Vim account at our Site1. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to load our network service descriptors into OSM. So I can go ahead and upload packages that I've pre-prepared. In OSM, we have a GitLab repository where we store all of our OSM packages. So after this webinar, I'm going to be finishing the publication of these packages, but essentially you're going to be able to find the raw network descriptors for the website and the AI traffic. Don't get too excited about them because there is no AI. We haven't actually written an AI application. This is a demonstration of OSM capabilities, not an actual store that is that is going to be doing really cool things as an application. This is the management and orchestration side of things. So we have our K8s deployed at Site1. If I go here and I go to Idea Store Site1, it's empty. All I can see is 404 not found. There's no application deployed there. All we know is that Kubernetes is up and running, and it's exposed an Nginx endpoint, and that's all that we have in Kubernetes. So the next thing we need to do is deploy our network service, and that looks like this. OSM network service create, I give it a name. I say what network service descriptor to create it from, and I specify the Vim account. That is how we specify the location for this deployment. So we go ahead and start launching that. Just going to take a moment here because unfortunately I am in Canada and all of the infrastructure that I'm using for this is located in Europe. So I do have a bit of a round trip time for accessing OSM. But the important part on this to note is that, yes, OSM does work over higher latency networks. Distribution, as long as you've got layer 3 connectivity, OSM deals with it quite well. So if I now go in and I look under my network service instances, of course, I just happen to have timed out of my web UI, sorry. I look at my OSM instances. Here's the dashboard. We can see that it's now starting to give us idea about our instances running. It says that we've got one Vim account, one network service instance running. I can drive into the network service instance itself. I see it's been deployed, and so it's up and running. So I'm going to try this here, but I have the, oh, there we go. I've been having bad luck with Chrome deciding to cache content really aggressively. But basically what we see here is website and the ID of the process, or the pod basically randomly assigned identifier, so that we know, okay, we're talking to a specific unique instance. This is not the most, interesting side of the demo, because really all we're doing is we're just doing a very plain HTTP server. We're getting the content, and we're going to be showing different IDs showing up here as we start to scale. So as I keep on reloading this, you can see I'm getting the same ID over and over again. But now what happens? Oh yes, sorry. Great, you've got a lot of customers now, and you've got more and more customers that you're starting to get overloaded on your network service. So one of the newer things in OSM Release 10 is that we're actually able to scale KNF, Kubernetes units, from OSM directly. So we can do a manual scaling operation right here, where we go in and we say, okay, this VNF needs to perform a scale KDU action, and we want to scale it out. So I can go ahead and apply that operation, and there is a history of operations that you can go to and view to see what's happening. If I go back to the network instance again, I can see there's an operational status, which is showing an icon saying this is currently scaling. Another new thing in OSM version 10 is the operational dashboard, where we can go in and we can see information about the number of Kubernetes units that are happening in the background. And here we can see, oh, a new unit just came online. So now if I go here to my, oh, there we go. You can see that we're getting different IDs. So if I were to put this inside of just a little curl command here, we can see that, you know, when we hit the web page, it is now hitting different IDs. And if I go back into OpenSourceMANO and I say network service instance, I want to scale that out again so that there will be 3 web servers now behind the load balancer running. We can go ahead and apply that. The operation is going to run in the background. And eventually in here, we're going to see a 3rd ID show up. So this is how we can perform deployments to an edge site and perform remote operations such as scaling on it. Oh, there's our 3rd ID showing up. So now we have 3 web servers running in the background. So yes, that is how we can scale things up and down, perform remote operations. There are additional operations, which we call day 2 operations, which could be things that reconfigure, well, actually could perform any sort of operation you would desire in your remote site, but we're not getting into day 2 operations as part of the demo today. So we have things up and running, and I'll just leave this going in the background, and I shall go back to my slides. So we just had the demo of scale operations. Now, you've been even more successful. So we're going to add another store and another edge site, and it's actually quite simple. It's the same pattern as before. We open up our 2nd store. We add the computer with Kubernetes running on it. We tell OSM about it, and then we do the exact same command to deploy the network service again. So what does that look like? If I were to go to my screen again, which is running over here, one thing we can do is I can change this to ID of site number 2, and we can say, oh, we're getting our 404 not found there. So what do I need to do? I need to create the Vim account for this. And this one is actually located on Carre de la Princesa, and my Spanish is horrible sometimes. But this one is on a different street in Barcelona. So if I now go in my Vim accounts in my cute little map view, and I zoom in on Barcelona, I can see we have 2 stores, one located here and one located here. Sorry, there we go. I'm going to stop my scrolling now. So we have our 2 Vim accounts. I, once again, need to register my Kubernetes cluster with that Vim account. And okay, so there's our Vim account added for that. And now I am going to go ahead and deploy the network service to it with the OSM NS create again. And what we can do here once that gets created, is we can leave our idea site 2 running in the background. We look at OSM instances. We can now see that there are 2 instances, one on Canonical and one on Princesa. That are this one is currently starting up. It is in progress. You can see, sort of the state of it, how it's going through, and eventually it will become active. It takes about 20-30 seconds or so for it actually to become active. So, one other thing is you can actually drive down and see information about the individual VNF instances. And if you've got questions about VNFs versus CNFs or how they relate to network services, etc., that is a webinar for another day, or perhaps we've already covered it in the past. Okay, so here, this one shows that it's done. We can see that it's gone from 404 not found to being able to display the website for this. And what I'm going to do here, we'll leave site 2 up and running for a moment. And we can scale these individually. So I can go in to site 2 here and say, okay, I'm going to scale site 2 out. And then at the same time, I want to go in and scale site 1 in, because now the customers from site 1 have started going to site 2. So we can perform the scaling operations simultaneously, individually. Each site is autonomous. And that's one of the things about the distributed configuration in OSM, where we have an OSM service running at the edge site that allows us to perform operations independently and autonomously at each site. So the scaling was done on site 2. If I go back to site 1, I should see there's only going to be 2 IDs showing up. The third one is no longer showing up because I scaled it in. And if we take a look at our operational dashboard, we can see there's 2 sites that I can look at now. This one here has got the two units running, and Princesa, sorry, I got to go to live loading here. It also has two copies of the website backend running as well. So what happens next? We were at our franchise. We've added our second store and a little bit of information. Each store is autonomous. Loss of network to one store will not affect the other store. And operations are performed locally. There is the OSM VNF configuration and abstraction service called VCA that can be installed at edge sites to perform operations kind of at arm's length or locally. So, loss of the data center does not result in loss of the VCA. Actions that are performed by the VCA happen locally. They don't need to go across any sort of VPN or the internet in order to be able to perform that action. And now you're a victim of your own success. We need to figure out how to keep people flowing, reduce backtracking, and maintain social distance. That is a reality in today's world. We want to keep those one-way aisles flowing one way, and we want to help people to be able to navigate the store. So what we're going to do is we are now going to add some artificial intelligence for doing traffic steering within our site, within our 2 sites, actually. So we're going to use machine learning AI to direct people through the store. People come into the store. We know they're there. They're asking questions on their little tablets or phones in the in-store Wi-Fi going, okay, I have my shopping list. How do I walk through the store so that I can, go directly to where I want and not hit too many people along the way and perhaps avoid any sort of congestion or traffic jams? So we're going to, implement AI, but GPUs are really expensive to put at every edge site. So why don't we use something like a public cloud offering? Say, for example, Microsoft Azure. If we, you can start up a virtual machine inside of Azure with a GPU attached to it and rent it on demand and, terminate the instance overnight so that you're not, actually keeping it running while there's nobody in your store. So it's a very same pattern. We use OSM to describe our application. We tell OSM to deploy it in Azure, and then the store can communicate with it either through a secured network if you decide to use a VPN through your public/private cloud offering, or if it's an application that's written so that it has its own credentials, you could expose that port directly on the internet and secure your communication that way. It really depends on what your architecture is and what sort of security paradigm you want to use for that. Because this is a demo, I'm actually going to be showing this using a public IP address from Azure. Demo of public cloud with Azure. Sorry, was somebody asking a question? Can you do a scale up and down to a specific account? I believe so, but I am going to put this in the I will get back to category. I know there are ways of doing scale operations where we're going to scale by multiples. I just don't know if that's exposed through the web UI right now. And there's two ways of interacting with OSM, the web UI and the CLI. And I've been showing kind of both here. The things that I was doing earlier from the command line, such as uploading the packages, that can be done through the web UI as well. But sometimes we've had, this being an open source project, we've not always implemented everything the exact same way. And we're actively working on making sure everything gets aligned. So here I have my Microsoft Azure account. This is actually my live Azure account. And I have created a public IP address called Public Brain that we're going to be using for this. Where is Public Brain? Right here. Here's this IP address. So for those of you following along live at home right now, you could actually try pinging this and you'll see that, okay, there's nothing there. There's nothing alive. So quick little overview. Oops, my screen share somehow stopped. Is everybody seeing my, yes, okay, screen share is back on and live. So tiny little overview of Microsoft Azure. Azure groups your resources inside of itself. You create multiple what are called resource groups. And this is the anchor that OSM uses for deployments. So when you create the entry for OSM to see what, to register the Vim account for doing deployments, you will need to specify the resource group that it's part of. So now I'm going to go in, I guess I can get rid of the ping here, and I'm going to create my Azure Vim account. What we can see here is I give it a name. I tell OSM what type it is. This is Azure. This is not a dummy this time. Here's the actual authentication URL. The user, is my actual user and password, so I'm not exposing them in the webinar here. You're not going to be able to see those ones. I've given it a description that I call public cloud offering from Azure. I give it a configuration name. I tell it information from Azure. Azure has regions. So what region do I want to deploy this software in? Well, I'm picking West Europe in general. Resource group, this is the resource group that I was talking about, OSM. So that matches exactly what I have here in Microsoft Azure, home, OSM. Subscription ID, again, these are, let me see, we've got our client ID, our secret, our tenant, and our subscription ID. These are 4 pieces of information that will be private to each account, and that is what's used to make up full authentication with Microsoft Azure. The next thing we have is, what is the virtual network that I'm going to be using? It's called, sorry, let me go to up here as well, the Management Net Virtual Network. So this is something that needs to exist in your resource group, and OSM will deploy into this network. And lastly, I have a pattern for what flavor I want to choose. So in this case here, I'm saying, well, any flavor that starts with the word basic is what I want to use. For things like making sure that you're going to select something that's got a GPU or high memory or compute intensive or things like that, you can have various flavor patterns that will match what's in Azure. And then your network service descriptor will say things like, well, I want 4 CPUs, and OSM will, choose the closest flavor to that to help, match your what you've deployed with what's available in Azure. I see there was a question. How about VLAN communication between the 2 network services? Is this possible? Absolutely. There are any number of ways you can design that network. Enabling a VLAN or a VPN between your site and a public cloud is not something that OSM is currently automating. But it is something that we have been talking about, and we've been, researching different ways of how we can make this easier, how we can make the integration between public and private cloud automated as far as setting up the networking goes. Right now, OSM is about deploying the software, but not currently configuring a network between 2 sites, because that's kind of an infrastructure thing or something that your security team may be involved in and may not want automated. But of course, we're always seeking to push the boundaries on that. So so hopefully we will have that done soon. So I've created my Vim account now. And I can go ahead and upload my package descriptors for my AI traffic VNF and the network service. And then the last thing that's going to happen is I'm going to issue the network service create command. So this goes ahead, and we're creating a network service called IDEA Brain. And we're saying we want it deployed in the Azure account. So if I go over to my network service instances here, I can see that this network service is being deployed. And as I mentioned before, OSM NS list, I can do things like show the status of things from the command line. So we can see here, building instantiating. That is the same information that we see in the web UI, building instantiating, and deployment progress 2 out of 4. If I go over to my Azure site now, and I refresh this, unfortunately, Azure can be a little bit slow sometimes. I don't know if it's just, sort of the plan that I have that makes it a little bit slow, but right now we just have to Ask somebody to play some music or something while we wait for this to finish deploying. I should have done that while I was talking about the Azure deployment and how OSM maps up all of its things. But okay. So I did mention that we have this resource group, and this is where our deployments are eventually going to start showing up. You just make sure that everything is still running. And yeah, this is how we know it's live. One thing that I'm going to mention in here is that OSM at this time will not automatically assign public IP addresses to your deployed resource. That's something, you know, we're still trying to decide what the best way of doing that is, if there's specific semantics that we want, how to fit that concept in with the network service descriptor such that there's some sort of alignment with the ETSI SOL specifications. It's something that, you know, we've been talking about. If people have ideas or things that they want to say or see in that area, then certainly you're welcome to join OSM calls and help us, you know, figure some of these things out. Wow, this is slow for me today. Okay, here it says that it's actually done. Oh, I know. Shift refresh. Okay, I honestly do not understand why. Oh, sorry. Francisco-Javier warned me about this. Reset to regular size. Honestly, this has not happened to me. Refresh. Well, according to OSM, it is deployed. According to Microsoft Azure, it is not deployed. Activity log. Loading, loading, loading. You know what I'm actually going to do? My apologies, everyone. I am going to completely close this up and go to Azure again and see. Okay, well, unfortunately, I am not seeing my deployment in Azure. If I do the NS list here, I can see that it is deployed. And if I do an NS show of idea brain, it's going to tell me that it received a private address inside of Azure. Okay, sorry, grep 10.0. There we go. It is, you know, deployed in a Microsoft network, virtual network, and it's going to be on this 10.0.0 subnet. And VNF list, OSM VNF show. Oh, sorry, here it is. It has received an IP address from Microsoft Azure of 10.0.0.4. So what I wanted to be able to show was, you know, association of that public IP address to the region. Deployments 2 succeeded. What deployment has succeeded? Oh no, those were me in the background. Activity log. Write virtual machines. Well, the virtual machine is there. You see that it's been created. Why will it not let me go to it? I'm just looking to see if there's anything in here that allows me to go to. Okay, this is how we know it is a live demo. My sincere apologies for this. What I'm going to do then is go back to the slides, and you know, it has been deployed, but we're not really going to be able to connect to it because Azure is not letting me see my resource and letting me assign that public IP to it. So, little bit of a peek behind the curtain. what do we have? In our central site, we have OSM full install. So all the services of OSM have been installed on top of microK8s as a Kubernetes infrastructure. This is where, you know, when you connect to the web UI or do an OSM CLI command, you're going to be performing remote operations to this OSM install. On our edge site, the Kubernetes has been installed on a single server, and OSM has been installed with the VCA only option. So that means that we're not installing a lot of software there. We're just installing a very lightweight component of OSM, and it is going to be talking directly to the Kubernetes cluster that is there. This is not mandatory. You could have the VCA that is running in the central site talk directly to the edge site and perform all of its operations over that network. So it's not necessary to deploy a VCA in every every Vim that you create or every site. You certainly can mix and match these things as needed. I see there is one more question. What is the preferred method to use customized Helm charts? Public Helm repositories. So there are two ways of dealing with Helm charts. I'm actually going to go here under Kubernetes. You can see there's this K8s repo, add K8s repository. And that is one way of being able to specify Helm repositories that you're going to get things from. So there's, you can have your own Helm repository that you add this way, or you can use, upstream ones and work directly with published ones. So hopefully that answers that question. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. It would help if I showed the Osm UI. There we go. So here we've got, under the K8s, we've got Kubernetes repositories, and you can, add one. So, specify the type, is it going to be a Helm chart or is it going to be a Juju bundle? So those are ways of being able to, add Helm repositories for sorting and loading your Helm chart in your VNFD. I'm going to try one last time here. No. Honestly, I have no idea what happened. So with that, I'm going to go back to our slides because it's Q&A time. So with this presentation, feel free to go ahead and start typing in your questions. If there's anything that has not been answered, go ahead, ask it again or clarify your questions. And we'll go ahead and, see what questions come up.
First of all, I'd just like to thank both of the speakers for their time and energy this afternoon to put forward and explain the OSM 10 specifics. And if you have any questions, now is the time to give them. I can give a few minutes to see if those come. Otherwise, we'll end the session in a couple of minutes' time.
Okay, maybe. Well, the things that. By the way, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I've changed to a different laptop. just for to avoid this heard, unfortunately during the session, that something was broken in the, in the sound on my side. So I'm really sorry for anyone who had to suffer really bad sound at the at the beginning. But it happened just in the middle of the webinar, so there was no chance to fix it. Anyway, and I'm still hearing that it's noisy, so now I don't know what to, what can be done. Anyway, I mean, as I was saying, Mark has been really proficient to answering questions during the session. So you are not forced to. Oh, here is Mark with yeah. You can tell us what happened.
So if you'll notice, I went incognito. I honestly do not know. There's obviously something that is not very right with my installation of Chrome, such that it is caching things or something so badly. Because here you can see my other session, and I hit refresh on this, and it's still it showed up. Oh, gotta love this. Gotta love this. So sorry, I'm going to spend just the moment here and we can go back to this ping. And while anyone is thinking of any further questions to ask, I'll go ahead. This here is how you assign a public IP in Microsoft Azure. And I'm going to go ahead and increase our font size just a little bit here. So you go to the network card, you go in on other IP configurations, and you say, I would like to associate a public IP address. And here's my public brain IP address that I want to associate. And that's basically it. So that, saves it in the background. If I go here, there we go. It's all of a sudden live. And this is what I was talking about. I'm on the other side of the Atlantic, so there is a little bit of a lag for me to talk to the services. Anybody who's at home now, you can go ahead and ping this. This is live, and in fact, I could SSH directly to it, and it will let me in because I told OSM to deploy this network service with my private key. So I can go ahead and log in, and we can see here that I'm live in Azure. It's created a VM with the name of Idea Brain, and it's part of the AI traffic network service. So that is the sort of naming pattern that OSM gives to your VMs. I can look around. This is an actual VM that's up and running. If we do a trace route to it, we can see, I'm going all the way through the Microsoft network, getting out to there. And lastly, I know people are still trying to perform a little denial of service attack on my thing here, trying to crack my password and get into there. But if I go into OpenSourceMANO and I take a look at my network service instances and I see, okay, here's my Idea Brain, I'm going to go ahead and terminate that service now because my store has closed for the night and I don't want to have it up and running. So sure enough, it's gone. So we're not able to ping to it. The trace route ends now somewhere off in Microsoft land, and I can no longer SSH to that instance because it has been terminated. So going through to the resource, this is probably, it's probably going to show up for a while yet, but you get the idea. We are live in Azure, and it was available on the public internet. And there are any methods of securing your communication between your edge sites and your public cloud, from a VPN to encrypted channels to the use of SSL and private keys, the use of any sort of encrypted and authenticated gRPC. There's many ways of tackling that problem. OSM is looking at, as I mentioned, as a community, we're looking at a couple of ideas of how to help automate that for you. But ultimately, the decisions on how you want to secure edge to cloud offerings is something that you need to decide and you need to agree to with your security group. Or if you're the security group, you need to have an opinion on it. Sorry. Finally got that up and running, so I thought I'd just quickly show that to you, and we can go ahead back to the Q&A slide. And if there's no further questions that are coming up, then we can go ahead and close out the session. So I'm hoping the fact that there are no questions means that I explained things well and not that this wasn't interesting.
Is there any additional question? I mean, we've been answering the question this time during the event, so hopefully it's been more interactive, and I think that was better than waiting for the end to answer the questions. So, but anyway, if anyone has a last-minute question, we can spend a couple of minutes. If not, let me remind you about our next OSM event, which is OSM Hackfest, due to 13th to 17th of September. In this this time, it will be dedicated to the 5G use case with open air interface, where we will be doing some onboardings, but I mean, it would be, I think, a really good experience for anyone who is interested in the use case and in learning on orchestration in general, so you can apply to your that knowledge to your use cases. Okay. So if there's no additional questions, I think that we can close the webinar. Thank you for attending. Both the video and the slides will be available for you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for both our presenters. And of course, thank you all for listening to us. Please also keep an eye on our Bright Talk channel, as we are making webinars on a regular basis. And once again, I thank you and say goodbye.